All right, everyone. Good morning. How's everyone feeling this morning? Happy homecoming. That's what I like to hear. I like the front row right here. Awesome. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Sahil Singh. I am a Master's of Engineering student in Mechanical Engineering here at the lovely University of California, and I love this university. The incredible amount of perspectives here, the opinions, the perspectives, the values, all under one roof is truly inspiring to see. And all of those ideas mean that we make things happen. We are the #1 university in the world for startups, and there's a reason for that. And we would like to thank you for being here, and we'd like to give a special thank you to our donors who make all of this possible. Our generations of donors are what make this program possible and keep Berkeley innovating. Now, let's talk a little bit about our speaker for today. Darren Cook is UC Berkeley's Interim Chief Innovation and Entrepreneurship Officer. He's also the Executive Director of the Life Sciences Entrepreneurship Center, faculty at the Haas School of Business, and led the biotrack at Berkeley's Skydeck Startup Accelerator. He teaches entrepreneurship at Haas and in programs at the National Institutes for Health and National Science Foundation. In his past life as an attorney, he led an IP legal team at Biorad Laboratories and was a life sciences patent litigator. Before that, he was an engineer developing cochlear impacts at the University of California at San Francisco, just across the bay. And he is an incredible person. I hope you get a lot from what he has to say today. Now, without further ado, please welcome up Darren Cook.
All right, thank you. Hey, folks. So you just got this background, but I'm Darren Cook. So Interim Chief Innovation and Entrepreneurship Officer for UC Berkeley. Also happen to do all this other stuff, including teaching at Haas and other entrepreneurship things. I just want to point out, when I did this presentation last year, it was in the middle of the football game, which made me think, no one's going to be there, right? I don't know what. There's hundreds of people last year. Thank you, smaller audience, for coming. So I appreciate that. All right, well, first, quiz. Is a bit of a lag. Pop quiz. How many organizations do we have on campus that supports innovation and entrepreneurship? Just by numbers, what do you think? So you just heard about Berkeley Skydeck, that's one of them, right? Startup Accelerator, 10, you think? There's a bunch. 30? Yeah. Would you think it looks like this? It's a lot, right? And then, how do you make sense of all that? Like, what in the world? Did you want to take a picture of that? Guess what? This is online at inde.berkeley.edu. iande.berkeley.edu. If you want your own PDF copy of this, that's where you can find it. How do we make sense of all this? Because that was complicated, right? Well, luckily, back in 2017, Paul Alivisatos, then Vice Chancellor for Research, now, coincidentally, I mean, just sort of curiously, the president of the University of Chicago, commissioned a blue ribbon report asking the question, how do we make sense of all those complicated logos on that screen? And answered the question, 2019. He hired the right team. Who is the right team to make sense of that? Anyone recognize the former dean of the business school from 2008 to 2018, known as the singing dean? I'm not sure where he got that reputation or that nickname. Rich Lyons became our first Chief Innovation and Entrepreneurship Officer back in 2019, 2020 timeframe. And he hired Laura Hassner as the first Executive Director, and she's right here in the front row, the first Executive Director of Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and also runs the Berkeley Changemaker program. So then what happened? Right, stuff like this. Wait, we know what happened to Rich Lyons, right? Yeah, he became the, just so if people are thinking like, hey, that name sounds familiar. Yeah, he's now our chancellor, the 12th chancellor of the university. We do now have the INE, the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Chancellor, running the place. So what happened next? put together the secret sauce of this organization, those 100 or something logos on that screen. How do you make sense of that? Well, we put together a council of members that genuinely do work together. Right, let that sink in. 65 orgs, each one represented on this council, that actually works together to point and pull in the same direction. How does that work? Well, this is just like sort of behind the scenes, but we do have a database of shared resources and opportunities and things that we're accomplishing. And then with that sort of synergy, with that sort of pointing and pulling in the same direction, what comes next? Boom, you just heard this, but Berkeley, #1 for venture-backed startups founded by undergraduate alumni, 3 years in a row. So, okay, now really, how did this happen? Let me give you a bit of a history. You probably saw something as you walked in, but let me give you a quick trip through history. What did that slide full of logos and resources look like even just back in 2000? 2000? There wasn't much, right? I was a graduate student here in 1994 to 96. I don't know, I guess I was aware of some of these things. But you know what, fun fact, I actually took a class in 1994 in the room across the hall. I thought, oh my gosh, this is like really coming back. Yeah, in 2000, what did we have? We had some stuff. 2005, more things hit the ecosystem. 2010, more things hit the ecosystem. 2015, 2020. By the way, if you want all of these slides, these are also on the same ind.berkeley.edu website, bringing us up to today. But why? Well, because enough people were asking this question, we literally wrote a book about it. It came out just 2 months ago, Startup Campus, How UC Berkeley Became an Unexpected Leader in Startups and Entrepreneurship, published. If you're curious to get a copy and you're a student, I have a special QR code which you're welcome to get on a postcard after this session, student, faculty, staff. You can get your own free PDF. If you just want to buy it, this is the QR code that will take you to the right site. All right. Oh, yeah. I am not taking credit for this book, by the way. The lead author, Mike Alvarez Cohen, is pictured here to my left, happens to be in the room, although he does not want me to mention this. But let's give a big thanks to Mike. And second in charge is Laura Hassner. You can see her there. So major team effort, nearly 100 contributors to this book. So if you're interested to know more, how did we do it? It's all there in the book. So, but how did this happen at Berkeley? Right? What do you think of when you think of UC Berkeley? It's got some reputation, right? You're probably thinking of this, right? Or this. Who was here in the 70s? Yeah, stuff like this. Or maybe you're thinking the foundational research that happens on campus. This is literally a picture I've taken. You've probably seen this if you've walked around with my phone. It's a line of parking for Nobel laureates, right? Because we've got a bunch of them. Jennifer Doudna, CRISPR, Jim Allison, cancer immunotherapies. Like, this is the foundation. This is the bedrock of the university. Anything else that we build on, startups, entrepreneurship, it comes from this, right? But this is core to the endeavor we have here. And then we have startups. Rachel Horowitz, the CEO of a public company that's using CRISPR as a technology, still here in the East Bay. Not just biotech, even though that's mostly what I think of. Databricks, bunch of professors and PhD students. Databricks is worth a fair bit of money at this point, right? All right. These are all coming out of foundational research on the campus and being translated to be out in the world to benefit society. But how does this fit our mission? You may legitimately be asking, and a lot of people do ask this, wait, how does all this venture stuff and startup stuff and entrepreneurship, Berkeley's a public university, right? How is that us? Yeah, because it's actually our mission. What's our mission? What's the University of California's mission? And if you're If you're like me, you should be groaning at this point because you're thinking, oh no, is he about to talk about a mission statement? I mean, what's Amazon's mission statement? I don't know, right? It's going to be dumb. It's going to be something like exceeding customer expectations or something like that, right? But we have a University of California mission statement. You can Google it and find it on a website, and it looks like this. Unfortunately, maybe, that there's a lot of words. However, I can boil this down into the 5 most important words. They're right there. What are they? Providing long-term societal benefits. And that makes sense, right? And this is a public university. You would think that that would be right up at the top. I'm not going to throw any other university under the bus, except for Stanford. What if Stanford came out and said, you know what our mission is? Yeah, providing long-term societal benefits, that's us. And you'd be like, I guess, right? Right, but when you think of it in the context of UC Berkeley and the University of California system, it just hits right? Yeah. Anyway, how do we do it? 3 tenets: teaching, obvious, great; teachers, great; students, research, we just saw that, CRISPR, cancer immunotherapies, groundbreaking research. And then what's the third one? Public service? Huh. How does that fit in? Well, let me show you. Mission number 3, we provide public service. So a bunch of words again, but look what it says. We disseminate research results and translate scientific discoveries into practical knowledge and technological innovations that benefit California specifically and the nation. Right? So this is baked into the mission. We need to do this, and you can see why. I'm going to suggest the foundation of a lot of what happened at Berkeley started 13 years ago, the Baker Faculty Fellows Program, where suddenly we're giving translational research awards to faculty members to push their technology in the direction of commercialization. This was new. This is actually still new. It's still fairly unusual at a university level. We're rolling this out across the 10-campus UC system, but it's been at Berkeley for 13 years. Right, so we've had 84 faculty fellows, dozens of companies started, where suddenly it becomes cool for faculty to be on this slide. I'll tell you, this was not a thing. Certainly when I was in grad school, this faculty were not scrambling to be on this slide. Turns out my PI is right there, Tony Keaveney. But this was not a thing. So now it's become what we want to do, and it's baked into the system.
And each one's a hyperlink to their lab.
Right, if you go to the I&D website, that PDF is on the website, and each one could be hyperlinked to their lab. That's correct. So, and it's baked into our system throughout the University of California. What is this? Did I just put a memo on the screen? I did. That looks boring, right? Oh, wait, what does it say? Hold on, this is from the Executive Vice Provost from the system, directing the 10 UC campus chancellors to consider innovation transfer and entrepreneurship in the academic personnel process. Well, that also sounds boring. Let me unpack that. What does that mean? That means, you know, when faculty are up for tenure, this is the academic personnel process. When faculty at the University of California, any of the 10 campuses, including Berkeley, are up for tenure, this counts positively, right? I give this talk from time to time to other universities. I challenge other universities, like, hey, have you seen this anywhere else? Consistently, people are like, no, that's new, except for one university in Australia. Who knew? All right, another quiz. Think to yourself, what percentage of undergraduates do you think should start a startup? Well, that's not for everybody, right? Yeah, 100%? Nah, what, 10%? I mean, this is special DNA, right? Yeah. But what percentage do you think would benefit from thinking like an entrepreneur? Yeah, of course, they all would, right? We have a program on campus that does just that. I mentioned earlier when I introduced Laura Hassner, she's right here in the picture. She runs the Berkeley Changemaker program, 50 classes on campus, 10,000 students have gone through this. Berkeley students have gone through at least one Berkeley Changemaker course. Critical thinking, collaboration, communication, right? These are skills that are needed by entrepreneurs. They also happen to be skills that are needed by everybody, right? So I teach an undergraduate Changemaker course called Berkeley Changemaker Human Health, basically just applying communication, critical thinking, and communication and collaboration, the 3 C's, to public health topics, right? I'm not teaching them to be an entrepreneur, but they sure are thinking about like one. All right, so changemaker.berkeley.edu if you're interested in more information about that program. All right, so what else is new? What is coming down the pike for us? Yeah, we just launched a VC fund, right? We realized that we had the opportunity at a campus level to take advantage of the economic upside of the innovations that are coming out of the campus, that we could actually invest in them, right? This is brand new too. We actually went down and petitioned the regents, if you will, to allow this to happen. So this is launching as we speak. Happy to answer questions about that. But anyway, you're probably here, a lot of you are here thinking, but wait, what opportunities are there in entrepreneurship for students on campus? Well, good question. Let me give you an example. First of all, of course, we have a lot of classes. If you just look entrepreneurship or innovation, hundreds of classes come up. But let me give you a case study of one undergraduate student who I think managed to use almost every resource on campus. Hang tight. What if you had a big idea and you decided to go through the Big Ideas Contest? What is the Big Ideas Contest? So this is a social innovation program on campus. And what if you went into the Big Ideas Contest with an idea for a technology to detect stroke in people who have already had a stroke, right? So this is important innovation for a lot of people. What if Ashmita Kumar here showed the winner of the grand prize for the Big Ideas Contest, went into this program and did it? What if she also enrolled in the NSF I-Corps program? Just to understand, she was actually, this is a class that I teach, so she was one of my students. Went through, knocked it out of the park, figuring out market needs using a structured customer discovery approach. Yeah, what if she then joined the E-Hub, the Haas Entrepreneurship Hub on the edge of campus, basically a restored mansion for would-be entrepreneurs, actual entrepreneurs, to come in and figure out, to meet each other, to collaborate, to get the basics of entrepreneurship. Great resource on campus. More about that in a second. What if you then go Satarja, SCET, the Satarja Center for Entrepreneurship and Technology, the engineering school's entrepreneurship program. They have programs like this, the Neurotech Collider Lab, which ultimately results in the Collider Cup, where students from each of the classes go and they pitch, and they could win prizes for being the best in the program. Wait, is that Ashmita Kumar again? Yeah, with her same technology again? It is. Citrus. So the program on campus that's focused on creating IT solutions that generate societal and economic benefits for everyone had a special Citrus Innovation Intensive. Right. Looking for students who would get a scholarship to go through this program. Wait, is Ashmita right there in the middle? She is. There must be programs at Haas, right? Indeed, we have a bunch of stuff. The STEP program, the earliest step into entrepreneurship, right? So basic 10-week program, the principles of how to start a company run by folks at the Berkeley Haas Entrepreneurship Center, right? Second place, Code Blue. Also at Haas, the Launch Startup Accelerator, run by MBA students, longer program, actual cash prizes, and would you believe Ashmita won that one as well. How about Skydeck? You heard about that already. Berkeley Skydeck, that's literally what it looks like. It's in downtown Berkeley. We have 300 companies go through there every year, 800 plus advisors, wild. 800 plus interns are placed with companies every year. This is a huge program, and it's hard to get into. We have a program that is basically like a startup school called Pad 13, mostly welcoming students from, or startups from across campus, access to the same 800 advisors, to the 50 workshops, et cetera. Then it gets tough, right? What most Pad 13 companies aspire to is getting into what we call cohort. Now they get real money, $200,000 worth of investment, longer term program, demo day, 1,000 of people in the audience, that kind of thing. Did Code Blue get into the 1% acceptance rate Skydeck cohort? Yeah, Ashmita did. What in the world? You'd think that would be the pinnacle, right? Yeah, written up in the Berkeley News, AI on an iPhone, UC Berkeley student startup aims to detect stroke, save life. If I hadn't gone to Berkeley, none of this would have happened. Seems like that's the top, right? You made it all the way through the ecosystem using every resource. You made it into 1% acceptance rate Skydeck. You got the investment. What next? Oh, wait, hold on a sec. CBS News. CBS News? UC Berkeley student enters AI stroke detection startup in a competition. What kind of competition would this be? Does anyone know our new athletic conference? It's the ACC, right? Weirdly, I don't know what. We're on the West Coast, but we're on in athletic conference with Duke, and that's who we're playing tonight, right? Would you believe that the ACC has a startup competition for all the ACC members? So we're Duke, Clemson, SMU. Who in the world would we decide to send to compete live on TV at Notre Dame? Oh yeah, it's Ashmita Kumar with Code Blue competing live on TV at Notre Dame. Laura Hassner went with her to this event. She was robbed, didn't win it. However, there she is, literally on television, pitching Code Blue. So anyway, how in the world do you navigate such a complicated space? Yeah, this is where you start, begin.berkeley.edu. So this is the definitive database. You can see there's stuff on the side, the way it's cataloged. This is where you find the resources that fits your particular situation. If you hate well-organized databases, we also have a chat bot. So you can just query it, right? If you hate chatbots, I mentioned the eHub before, the Haas Entrepreneurship Hub. What's up in the corner here? Book a navigator. Would you believe that there's actually somebody in this house on the edge of campus whose full-time job is to actually listen to students, faculty, and staff and help them navigate the complicated ecosystem, right? If you're interested in this, you can go and book a navigator appointment in person or on Zoom right here on the website. So it's ehub.berkeley.edu. And again, the main website, begin.berkeley.edu. So I just gave you a pretty striking example of an undergraduate team. What if you were not an undergrad? What if you were a grad student? What if an MBA student, a postdoc, right? Do we have resources for you? We do. Many of them are the same. Let's look at another example of navigation. Hopo Therapeutics, right? A technology coming out of a lab at Berkeley Labs to combat lead poisoning. Let's look at what they did, right? They start with speed teaming. So here's an event that I just ginned up with Mike Cohen, the author of the book that I just mentioned. We're like, you know what we should do? It's like we keep getting these scientists saying there must be somebody at Haas, the business school, who could help me with my idea, right? And then we got folks at the business school saying, hey, I don't have any tech, but are there any startups who could use my help? We're like, you know what we could do is we could have a speed dating event where we just throw them together, right? And see what sticks. Well, a team went through it. Julian Reese, a postdoc at the Berkeley Labs, Hannah Weber, an MBA, MPH student, had one 10-minute Zoom call. Let that sink in. One 10-minute Zoom call where they didn't know each other first, right? I guess they hit it off because they went on. This is the I-Core class that they did next, which I taught. You can see here in the beginning, this is December 2021, 15 interviews, or 17 customer discovery interviews. I gather from this, they said, yeah, there's actually some market here that we'd like to explore. And they did all the other stuff. I-Core, went to Skydeck for Pad 13. The professor involved got a Baker Fellows Spark Award, that one that I just mentioned, one of the 84 Spark Awards. So seed funding from Berkeley Haas. Actually, Ashmita Kumar got this too. I don't even have a slide on this, right? So $5,000 worth of seed funding from the business school just to get your idea off the ground. So, and then what happens? So you can see, again, Skydeck, I-Core, FAST program, Baker Fellows, and then what's this last part? Baker Labs. Anyone been to Baker Labs? You know what that is? Anyone been to the old art museum, like back in the day? Yeah. Would you believe what the old art museum looks like today? Yeah. It's still this, but it's been transformed into rental lab space for biotech startups, both from the campus and outside of the campus. So we currently have 35 tenants. I think we're up to 50 companies that have been through the program at this point. Over $600 million raised. A huge facility on campus. We're currently building, because based on the success of the biolabs, the Baker Labs for energy and materials. If anyone's noticed a big hole in the ground, right where University Hall used to be, yeah, that's what's being built now. All right, what is HOPO doing now? Did they go and pitch live on TV for the ACC? No, they did something else. They got a $226 million BARDA award, government grant, to support their research. All right, good for them. Anyway, how would you like to meet some founders? Because you're not going to believe, I've actually got the founders of HOPO Therapeutics and Code Blue right here, ready to meet you. So let's bring them up. All right. Come on up, folks. I know, this is a surprise panel. This is the first time we're trying this. Oh, and you should have microphones below.
Wow.
Okay, obviously they're not lined up with their pictures. You'll figure that out. Right? But, okay, this is exciting. First time we've done this. I've never done a surprise panel before. I thought, what if we hid the founders in the audience, right? And you didn't come here for a panel. And frankly, I'll be frank, I think panels can be rather boring. They are, right? Because I have questions, I'm gonna ask you all questions, but they may not be the questions that you want me to ask them, right? So after I go through, I'm gonna ask them to introduce themselves, and the first question is, how in the world did you decide and then actually start your company? Like, what was behind this? Then I'm gonna throw it out to the audience, because I want to know what you want to know from our panelist founders. Ashmita, give us a bit of background, history, like where did Code Blue come from?
Yeah, so Code Blue, what we're basically building is a way to detect stroke signs early on onset and get people to the hospital before that damage becomes long-term or fatal. And we do that by plugging into people's existing devices with a camera and a mic and detecting those fast signs of stroke continuously through passive monitoring. Now, that all sounds nice and complicated, but the reason for building it was actually very simple. I have a family history of stroke. My grandpa had a series of them before I was born, and he didn't know the signs, so he didn't seek treatment. And he ended up with permanent damage. He couldn't walk, talk, or even recognize his own family members. So I grew up knowing that strokes were a very dangerous part of my family history, but then in 2021, half my dad's face started drooping. And we were terrified. We thought he was having a stroke. But in spite of the fact that he knew the signs, he still didn't seek treatment. We got very lucky with him that it was Bell's palsy, but this is when I started thinking, right, what if there was a way to detect those signs of stroke for people who don't know the science. That's over 60% of people, according to the CDC. And then solve the second problem of getting them to the hospital in that golden hour before it becomes untreatable. For people like my dad who don't realize that time is crucial. And the way I did that was applying my engineering chops, but I didn't really think that there was a way for this to get out there. I mean, I, at the time, was a high school junior. This wasn't going to be anything that I could distribute or get out there. And then I came to Berkeley. And then I saw a flyer for Big Ideas while I was rushing to my computer science discussion. And a few words stood out to me. Big Ideas focuses on mission-driven, impactful startups and, nonprofits and things like that, offering them funding. And it was like, do you have a big idea that can create an impact? Come join us in the Neurotech Collider Lab. And I thought this sounded pretty amazing. And maybe they would be able to answer my question on how I could get this out there. And that started the journey that Darren talked about. Where I happen to use basically every single resource available in the Berkeley startup ecosystem to get where we are today.
Yeah, that's awesome. I just want to highlight, this started when you were a junior in high school.
But I had no idea that you make startups of things that are not like, when you think of startup, you think like Facebook, Google, Meta, B2B SaaS companies. You don't think, oh yeah, technology that, saves lives and is in health tech and is impactful, right? I had no idea that world was even out there until I came to Berkeley.
Nah, that's awesome. All right, great. I'm going to go over to Julian next because you are the inventor of the tech behind Hopo, right? So I want to hear about this first. Like, what was this about? What's this chelating technology about? At what point did you think, this could actually be a company that gets a $226 million BARDA grant? Like, tell us about the genesis of that.
Sure. So I wish I could claim to be the inventor of the technology, but I think of myself as the inheritor of the technology instead. So I moved to the Bay Area in 2017 to start my postdoc at Berkeley National Lab. And the research group that I worked at there studies the interaction between the body and the heaviest elements. Most of them are radioactive, things like uranium and plutonium. The sorts of things that are really, really bad if they end up in your body. And the research program had been running for quite some time. The government for a few decades, I think, was aware of the fact that if some sort of nuclear disaster happened, a reactor accident, a dirty bomb, something like that, where a large group of people are exposed to radioactive material, there's no treatment available right now. And they saw that as a real concern. And so they started this research effort at Berkeley Lab to try and develop drugs that could be used in the event of some nuclear disaster. And so I arrived in the group as a postdoc, fascinated by this technology. And the work that had been done was quite successful, actually. I mean, there was a drug candidate that was essentially ready to go. The problem was that there's not a huge market for, nuclear threat preparedness outside of the government. It's not the kind of thing that you end up, selling in pharmacies or, are being prescribed by doctors. And so one of the things that I was really interested in was trying to figure out how to get this technology out into the world. And so we started thinking about other types of heavy metals that we could address. Other sorts of heavy metal poisoning that we could treat with these same drugs. So, some of the first work I did was thinking about the science. What other heavy metals can we take out of the body? And we answered that question, but it turns out that that's really not the right question to ask if you're thinking about starting a company. And that's a bit of a mental shift if you if you're a scientist. So it turns out the right question is, where is there an unmet need? what problem can we solve? And it's not always a perfect, it doesn't always align perfectly with, with the technology, the solutions. But I think that we were fortunate in that we were able to find a place where the unmet need outside of the government's use case and the technology do align. And so that's a little bit of kind of the work that is being supported by the government right now, because at the end of the day, they really are interested in the nuclear security program that we have. But really what drives Hopo Therapeutics as a company is our global health mission, our public health mission. And I will let Hannah talk about what that is.
Yeah, Hannah, how did you two meet? So Hannah, MBA, MPH student, I guess you just graduated. First of all, I'm curious to know, why did you even sign up for this speed teaming event where you met Julian? And then what happened after that?
Yeah, so I was in my first month of my dual MBA and my Master's of Public Health program here at Berkeley. My career before starting grad school was at a consulting firm that focused on helping pharmaceutical companies and biotech companies launch new products. And these were far advanced in clinical trials, ready to be introduced to doctors and patients. And my focus was trying to match those new technologies with ultimately the unmet needs that Julian was mentioning. And so that was really kind of my experience. Was working with Fortune 500 pharmaceutical companies, multinational companies that were very kind of far away from the startup ecosystem, and that was a very much a thing of a distant past for them. And so when I started my program at Berkeley, I was curious to see what the buzz was about related to startups, and I had a particular interest to work on products that had applicability for low-income countries and low-income markets, and that wasn't something that we focused a ton on at my previous job. So I wanted to kind of understand the world of starting from scratch and looking at new markets and figuring out how we could apply amazing technologies to groups that needed them the most and weren't getting the attention and the marketing effort that they needed. And so when we had a 1-week break from between semesters in October, I was trying to figure out what was the best use of my time. And one of the things that I had heard through the grapevine was this startup teaming program, and I really didn't have any intention of now, almost 5 years later, being at a startup. But I was curious, and I was very interested to see what was going on in the halls of Berkeley that I didn't have any access to being in the business school.
Okay, so I'm an attorney, and this is against the rule for me to ask a question where I don't know the answer. Do you remember what you talked about in that first 10-minute meeting?
I do. Do you?
Go for it.
Well, I think we had 10 minutes, right? So I think the first probably 3 or 4 was Julian describing the technology. And I think what I was most struck by was the fact that there had been longstanding and pretty significant government support for this program, but there was a translatable use case for what turned out to be 1 in 3 children in the entire world that had lead poisoning, a form of heavy metal toxicity that was not being addressed whatsoever. And being a commercial person in pharma, thinking, this is a massive problem. No one is talking about it, first of all, which was a challenge that was exciting for me. And this was just the volume of people that needed this tech was striking. And so I think probably the next 5 minutes was describing what I felt like I could offer, and then we were cut off. The Zoom breakout room cut us off.
We just shut you right off. Yeah.
Right off.
Yeah.
And then I think we met up the next day or the next 2 days and talked for 2 hours about what we could do with this.
All right, that's awesome. I didn't know that story. Okay, as promised, because I don't know the questions that you want to have answers to, Laura here is going to who's heard of Phil Donahue? Yeah, she's going to Phil Donahue this.
Hello, thank you for the presentation, by the way, it was great. I want to ask, well, I think it's fair to say that what the market wants isn't always what's best for society in the long term. I want to ask how UC Berkeley helped pave the way for your startups that actually have a tangible positive impact. Thank you.
What do you think? Ashmita, I know you think about this.
I think about this a lot. So, because I have thought of like alternate universes, like, or parallel realities where I didn't go to Berkeley and this, like, and I didn't do this. Like, I have to be honest, I don't think there's any other university really that comes to mind when it comes to the number of, there's a couple things. The number of mission-driven / impact startups. That's very unique to Berkeley, and it's very unique to Berkeley's culture. Also, like, having the largest number, I think now, of female founders coming out of university. That's also unique to Berkeley. I think this all stems from, how Berkeley supported basically all of our ideas, is that Berkeley actually, it goes back to the mission, right? The mission of Berkeley to translate basically all of these technological advancements into the betterment of society. That's something that you learn, right, when you're even doing like orientation as an undergrad and you're like hearing the history of the free speech movement and other like large movements that have happened in Berkeley. It's a very big focus for you and in your classes where it's like, we're learning all of this, but it's not just in a classroom, right? This is being used out in the real world. How do you become a part of that, right? And then as you can see, right, there are a million resources which you can use where people at Berkeley, instead of being like closed off and always in stealth about all of the startup things that you can do, right? They go out of their way to make it a priority to help you out. Right? Like, I was just starting out. I didn't know what to do about IP strategy. I literally talked to a Berkeley law professor, Matt Rappaport, and he was like, I have this firm that specializes in stroke technology patents. Would you like to get a referral? And I was like, yes, please. And they're doing our patents right now. So it's like, everybody here is just so willing to help you because they want to see your technology succeed and they want to see you succeed because everybody here in Berkeley believes in the mission. That's why they're at this school as opposed to any other school.
That's awesome.
Okay. So I guess my question is really this. There's a lot of people that walk around with great ideas, and many of them just die on the vine, all right? So for your, ideas that you had, what was the, if you can answer this, sort of the precipitous event that transformed it into a commercial enterprise from the idea? Because how do you transcend, from the idea stage into commercialization?
Gosh, that's a very good question. I wish there were a single event. It was, in reality, it was kind of a slow process, but I can tell you, the single event that kind of set my mind to it. When it became it became not just an idea, but but the defined future for me anyway. So I when I was working on this technology as a chemist, I actually had no idea that lead poisoning was as significant an issue as it is. Like Hannah mentioned, 1 in 3 children worldwide has lead poisoning. That's about 800 million kids. There's no treatment. And I think I was aware that it was perhaps a legacy problem, as a result of lead in gasoline and leaded paint and things like that. It was at one point totally commonplace in the U.S. and then it was banned, right? And so I thought that lead poisoning was no longer an issue because it's not talked about. And so I was actually home. I grew up in Seattle. I was home and having drinks with my brother, who's at the time was a high school teacher in inner city Baltimore. And he said, when I was describing my work, he asked if the drugs would work to treat lead poisoning. And I said, probably, but, why? That's not a problem that needs solving. And he told me that even today, he's got loads of kids in his classroom that have lead poisoning. Older housing stock in in low-income communities in inner cities. There's lead poisoning all over the place. It's here in Oakland. I think there's places in Sacramento that have 5 times the prevalence of lead poisoning as they did in Flint, Michigan, at the peak of the lead poisoning crisis there. And so after I went home, I started to do some reading about the scale of the problem. And the more I read, the more and more I became determined to take this technology out of the research lab and turn it into a company. And a company that could focus on developing treatments for this unmet need.
For me, it's sort of built like a crescendo. So like, I remember, especially towards the beginning, when I was thinking of this idea, I was thinking about it in the context of my family. But the more I started talking about it, and the more I started, talking to other people about it, potential customers, potential patients, potential caregivers, right? This is when I kind of figured out every single person knows someone who has had a stroke. It's become so prevalent that 1 in 4 people worldwide are expected to have one in their lifetime, according to the World Health Organization. And I remember thinking at some point after like this one conversation I had with a person whose friend's a doctor, their parent had a stroke in their house and they didn't even notice. And that's a doctor. If a doctor can't notice the symptoms in their own house, how is anyone else supposed to be able to do this, right? And I think that was kind of the moment that sealed it for me, where I was like, I owe it to others, if I'm going to be talking about this or thinking about this, to take it and give it my best shot to bring it out to the rest of the world, because people need this, right? And I just need to be a little brave and go, take a risk and try it out. And once we got that funding for big ideas, I think that's when it was cemented for me, and I never looked back. I was like, we have some money that we can use now for our first study, for our first patent. Now there's no excuse for why I'm not doing this full time. So that's when it started.
I also think that type of bravery is only possible when you are in an environment like this, where you're not working a full-time job. At least in my case, I had stopped to go back to grad school. I had really all of the options in front of me in terms of how to take this path forward. And we spent years, we still are spending, now we work full-time at the company, but it took a couple of years to get there, and it was all of the professors around me, all of the kind of startup support that existed in the National Lab and for scientific founders around Julian that allowed us to stop and work a couple hours on this every day for months and then years. It certainly wasn't going to happen without kind of a slow buildup of support. And so that I really kind of appreciate all of the logos, and we've tapped into one of them over time. But it wasn't all at once, for sure.
That's great. I just want to point out before the next question, Ashmita actually graduated early from Berkeley to work on her startup. All right, next question.
Awesome to be with you and to celebrate this moment. I appreciate it so much. It's wonderful to hear your stories. Thank you. And I'm curious, for Hannah, whether you've got, like Ashmita mentioned, Rappaport was one of her advisors or mentors that helped through a rough period. If you have any stories or situations where a mentor or an advisor was the key to helping you go past your dark moment when you were trying to surmount problems, what was that like?
There's definitely more than one. There's a lot more than one, but there's a couple of, I would say, a collection of mentors that I would cite, and that was my professors at Haas during my MBA program. There was a lot of flexibility and support shown to me when we had projects that focused on some company we had selected, and we had to focus on building a revenue forecast for this company or creating a marketing plan for a health tech product. And I went to my professors every time, and I said, can I work on a new chelating agent for heavy metal toxicity? And they said, absolutely, tell me more about it. And I was able to translate that classroom space and the exploratory work with a team in some cases, with a professor, and I actually leveraged a lot of those assignments towards working on the company and answering the questions that were coming up for us every day as we were starting to build the team. So one example is there's a professor, Jeff Ford, at Haas, and he teaches a class called Commercializing Biotech. And the question that the class seeks to answer is, how do you value and how do you predict the success of a product that you have no idea if it works and you have no idea if it's safe? And how do you start at the earliest stages to kind of formulate a strategy around this product? And that was essentially the question we were grappling with when we had a preclinical, an asset that we thought could do a lot of good in the world, but it hadn't proven itself out yet. And he walked me through that process, and that was essential. And that's something that I don't take for granted, and I think all of us try to use the expertise around us while we have it.
Ashmita, you took advantage of the 800 advisors at Skydeck, I believe.
Yeah, there's 800 advisors at Skydeck. I have worked really closely with 5 of them. There was the early stage even learning about customer discovery, because remember, I came at this from my EECS background, and I didn't even think about that part until I met Dave Weiner and Darren, who kindly let me into a graduate NSF I-Core program as an undergrad. And then there was there have been so many mentors, right? There was the Neurotech Collider Lab. That's where when I was doing Citrus, the innovation intensive, I actually met one of the now full-time advisors for a startup, Gail Gannon, who's the director of that Neurotech Collider Lab and works out of Baker. It's just so many people, I think, have helped me throughout this journey. It's hard to name just one, right? Laura even flew with me to Indiana to go pitch, right? Yeah, I can't even.
So we have a problem. We have at least 10 hands up.
I know.
This
is tricky.
I'm going to try to.
But we're at time. I wonder, you can stick around? So the panelists have volunteered to stick around, and so if you want to ask them questions, you can do it live. So any last thoughts from the panel?
Yeah, if you're a student in the audience, please take advantage of the resources. It's I didn't come to Berkeley thinking I was going to be an entrepreneur. It wasn't even on my radar. But there's no time like now, right? You're an undergrad. You have almost no responsibilities. Yeah, keep up with your classes. You just your job is to keep up with your classes and study all the time. I would also say don't get so caught up on the grades and the classes and forget to see the rest of the world, because I wouldn't have done any of this entrepreneurship stuff if I was completely just I need to study for XYZ midterm. You have to make some sacrifices, right? So I think, yeah, most of the value you get out of Berkeley, the classes are excellent, but classes are classes. Every college has classes. I think what is unique to Berkeley is all of that we just that Darren just covered, right? And all of the organizations and the people you meet, right? That's kind of what this is about, right? You don't come to school fixed in a thing. You come to school to explore and to expand your horizons and to take risks when it's kind of safe to take risks. Yeah, I think that's it.
Right.
Maybe just to add on to that, I would say, I think Hannah and I are both pretty risk averse in general, and that's not usually compatible with starting a company. But there are, Ashmita's right, there are times when you can and should feel free to take those risks, and certainly undergrad is one of them. I would love to go back to a period of time with minimal responsibilities. But no, really, I think it's it can be scary to start a company. It's intimidating, and that's okay. This is a safe place to fail, honestly. So if you have an idea, if you have a passion, if you have something that you feel needs to find its way out into the world, this is a really, really good place to take that journey and see what it's like. It's going to be hard, but you're going to learn a lot. And I think that's the point of, that's the point of being at a university like this. It's a place where, you should be able to learn a lot and be comfortable doing it.
Right.
And I'll stop talking.
Hannah, any 20 seconds or less parting thought on this?
I think, for me, I wasn't necessarily coming in with the technical expertise to take, a drug technology forward, but I had the will and the interest to learn, and I think the lesson for me that I shared with my business school classmates, and I still share with incoming students at Haas, is you can be an essential part of a new team. And that type of relationship and camaraderie is something that is again, a risk that you can take, and this is a safe space to do that. And I think that there are people around you, even if you don't have that perfect idea, there are people around you that if you work together, you can come up with it. And the bouncing ideas off of each other is, I think, a amazing part of our story, and is what makes us so successful. So would encourage others to just take advantage of everyone else around them.
That's great. Let's hear it for the panelists. All right. As you heard, they're sticking around. Laura Hassner's here. I'll be up in the front of the room if anyone has any questions. So thank you all for coming.